Hello, and in this video we are going to think about paragraphs to essays, how we compare the structure, but specifically how we really set up an essay in the best way using our introduction and specifically using our thesis statements. So let's think about how we would set up a paragraph. What is the structure for a paragraph? Well, a paragraph has three parts, basically. So we can think of it like a delicious sandwich with a top slice of bread and a bottom slice of bread and some delicious filling. So the topic sentence, so the first sentence of our paragraph, it has a topic and a controlling idea. That's how we begin. So think of that as your top slice. Then we have your supporting details, the ideas of your paragraph. So your delicious filling to your paragraph. And we have the concluding sentence. So it's how we finish a paragraph. We can think of this sandwich structure also for parts of an essay. So if we think of the introduction as the top slice of bread and the conclusion as the bottom slice of bread, and your ideas, your paragraphs as the delicious filling. So we would have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. So in the same way, we can think of the essay as being like a sandwich filled with smaller sandwiches for each of the paragraphs. So as discussed in a previous video, with our introduction, the very first sentence that we are talking about is a hook. The hook is to grab your reader's attention and to keep them interested. Then in the rest of the introduction, we get some general background. We're kind of preparing the reader for what you're going to say. And then the final sentence is our thesis statement. It names the specific topic and a controlling idea. So think of it as like a topic sentence, but bigger and stronger. So this thesis statement is very, very important. It tells the reader exactly what you think, exactly what you're going to tell the reader, and it does that right in the introduction. Now, in some writing cultures, the thesis statement comes later. In some writing cultures, the thesis statement comes actually in the conclusion. However, in English or English writing, the thesis statement comes at the beginning. In fact, it comes as the final sentence in the introduction. And it's going to name exactly what you think. So we are not writing a mystery novel where we are hiding the murderer's identity until the very end. No. We're giving it right at the front. You're saying, I think this because of this, right at the top. And then each body paragraph develops on that topic. Then you have your conclusion, some kind of concluding sentence in the paragraph. It might restate the topic and the controlling idea. It may summarize the main points. It may present a final statement. We will deal with conclusions in another video. So that thesis statement, it is, we can think of it as a topic sentence on steroids, right? This is controlling the whole essay. So it's a powerful sentence. It's the most important sentence in your whole essay. does not matter if your essay is 20 pages long. The thesis statement is the most important. Okay, so that hook, the introduction, we have a hook, we have your background information, so you're preparing the reader. This is the background to what I'm telling you about. And then that final sentence is a big, old, strong thesis statement. So let's take a moment and actually compare a topic sentence and a thesis statement. Well, firstly, a thesis statement does look remarkably similar to a topic sentence, but there are two major differences. So if we have a look here, so the one on the left is a topic sentence for a paragraph. The one on the right is a thesis statement. So hopefully you can see the thesis statement gives a lot more detail because it's controlling the whole of the writing, the whole of the essay. So the topic sentence on the left, it's fine, it's okay, but it doesn't give us enough detail. 3 reasons. Okay, what 3 reasons? So for a topic sentence, that's fine because we will find out all 3 reasons within a few sentences. However, for a thesis statement, it needs to have more detail. And we can think of this as giving the reader like a road map. So if we look on the right, so 3 reasons why people gain weight. Number 1, problems overeating. Number 2, lack of exercise. Number 3, medical disorders. So that's like a road map for the reader because we know paragraph number 1 is going to be problems with overeating. Paragraph number 2 is lack of exercise. Paragraph number 3 is medical disorders. So we know what to expect. So we can kind of mentally, in our mind, check off each time that we read the subtopics. So a thesis statement, it is the most important sentence in the introduction. It tells us what you think and it gives us the order that you are going to reveal that information. It states that specific topic and it gives the writer's point of view. So in the conclusion, you can give your final thoughts, but in the introduction, you are saying very clearly what you think. So in English writing, there is no mystery. It's not a question. It is a statement. It is telling people what you think. So, thesis statements. They state the topic and they may indicate the pattern of organization. So for example, language teaching methods have evolved since the 1960s. So what would you expect to find in the body paragraphs? And how will the paragraphs be organized? Well, we know that you have a very good idea that you will hear about how teaching methods have changed. And how will it be organized? Well, it's either going to be organized by decade, so 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, 90s, etc. Or it's going to be organized by method. So method number 1 was 1960s to 1970s. Method number 2 was 1980s to 2010s. Method number 3 was the late 2010s to current day. So it's probably going to be chronological. So what are the characteristics of a good thesis statement? Well, it may include the subtopics. So teachers can help students notice input by repeating keywords and structures, designing activities to catch their attention, and enhancing input. So what's the topic? The topic is teachers helping students notice input? What are the subtopics? Repeating keywords and structures, designing activities, and enhancing input. How many paragraphs do we expect? It's probably going to be 3. Number 1, repeating keywords and structures. Number 2, designing activities to catch their attention. And number 3, enhancing input. So the thesis statement may include the number of subtopics. And again, may is the key word there. So first language acquisition develops systematically in the following 3 areas: phonology, lexicon, and grammar. So basically sound, words, and grammar. Again, how many paragraphs would you expect to find? It's probably 3. Number 1, phonology. Number 2, lexicon. And number 3, grammar. So subtopics may be listed, or in fact should be listed, in parallel form. So we remember parallel form, noun, 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 or gerund, 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 or verb, 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 whatever it is. It kind of doesn't matter which it is, but it's important that they stay the same. So again, if we compare these two thesis statements, so Dul Dul Chickens is popular in Seoul because of its taste, speedy delivery, and reasonable prices, compared to Dul Dul Chickens, popular in Seoul because of convenience, flavor, and it is located near my house. Suddenly, that last sentence breaks the pattern. It breaks that parallel form. So, which is a better thesis statement? Well, hopefully you thought the first one. It stays in parallel form. We have noun, noun, noun. So taste, delivery, prices. So here we have an example of the basic structure of an essay. So we see here the essay is talking about different brands. So Supreme, the clothing brand, or lifestyle brand, I guess. Toys R Us, the children's toy shop. Lisa Frank, the kind of pencil case notebook kind of children's company. And UFC, the fighting brutality company. So I've taken this from an essay again on the excellent cracked.com. So these are the body paragraphs. These are the basic structure. So we need to give this an introduction. So let's think about the hook and the thesis statement. So the hook is in the blue and the thesis statement is in the red. Okay, so we can see that we have an attention-getting hook. So it's not enough these days to tell customers that your product is good. Then we'll have some background information, and then we'll have our thesis statement. So there are some brands whose business practices are so evil that they don't deserve to be in the same ballpark as cool. So they don't deserve to be considered cool. All right, that's great. So the thesis statement here, we can see exactly what the writer thinks. So we know that the writer is going to be giving us some nasty information about some popular companies. And certainly companies that you might consider cool. Yeah. UFC, Supreme, they're kind of pretty trendy brands. Okay, so great thesis statement here. We need to fill in some details in the middle. So just take a moment, have a read of that one. Okay, so what we have here is, it's pretty short, but it's a good example of an introduction. We have a nice attention grabber with a hook. Then we have some background information. So that's the lowest bar. Instead, you have to give them something a little extra. Tell them that your product will make them rich, sexier, cooler. So we're getting more specific. We're getting more towards that thesis statement. Then we have a thesis statement. We know exactly what the writer thinks, and we know the information, or the kind of information that is coming next. So one helpful way to think about a thesis statement is that, imagine you had to tell somebody the whole of your essay in one sentence. Yeah, if you had to summarize the whole of your essay in one sentence, what would you say to that person? That's probably your thesis statement. Or if it's not, it's a good way to start to build your thesis statement. So how could you tell somebody the whole of your essay summarized into one sentence? Well, this would be it. So as an example of how much the thesis statement tells us, how good it is at indicating the whole essay, or the writer's idea, let's look at 3 examples of thesis statements. So, although some educators oppose same-sex education, there is a lot of research that suggests separating boys and girls in middle school gets results. Okay, so just reading that, we know what's coming in the essay. So young people in my country have far less control over our future than young people in other countries. Okay, great. We know what is coming in those paragraphs. The large movement of people from rural areas to urban areas have irreversibly changed the modern way of living in ways that we may not fully appreciate. So we can see that these statements are very clear. They are not ambiguous. There's no grey area. They are telling us exactly what the writer thinks and what is coming. So going back to what I said at the beginning of the video, English thesis statements, they come in the introduction, at the final sentence of the introduction, and they are not ambiguous. They are not kind of hinting at what the writer thinks. They are saying very, very clearly what the writer thinks. And again, like I said, in some writing cultures, that this kind of statement comes in the conclusion, not in English. In English, it is right up front. It's telling us from the beginning what we are going to tell you. Now, my advice would be that you write the introduction last. And that's for a very good reason, is because you don't know what you are introducing until you have finished writing the main body. Quite often, we start with one idea, what we think the essay is going to be. But by the time we finish it, we realize, well, actually, I was kind of writing about a slightly different thing. So my advice would be to write the introduction last. So after you've finished the main body, and in fact the conclusion, it's much easier to write a thesis statement. Then you write the background information, and the last thing that you write is the hook. Now, it's very easy to try and write starting with the hook with sentence number 1 and just try and write the whole thing in one go, and you may have convinced yourself that you write better like that. Well, that's debatable, but certainly the easiest way to do it is you write the main body first, then you go back, you write the thesis statement, because now you know what your idea is, your overall idea. Then you write the background information, and then you write the hook. Okay, so the hook is the last thing you write. It's much easier to write a hook when you know what you are writing about. Okay, so sometimes this is called a headless essay. So headless, Headless, headless essay. You write the whole thing and then you put the head on with the introduction. So this is an important part of the writing process if we think about outlining an essay. So because an essay is very long, it's very important to organize it before you start writing. And the best way to do this is to make an outline, so to make a plan. And they help us organize both what we read and what we write. And organizing information is the best way to help your reader remember that information, but also for you to remember the information. So it's very tempting, especially if you get assignments and things like that, you just want to sit down and you want to start writing. Okay, you want to sit down and you're going to start with the hook and just start writing. Many, many years of research has shown that this is actually not very efficient. We fool ourselves into thinking that it's helping because it feels like, yes, I'm writing so much, I've written a whole page. What usually happens is you get to the second paragraph or the third paragraph and you get stuck. You've kind of run out of things to say. And one reason is because you did not know where you were going. You did not have a roadmap. And the map is your outline. So with a bit of self-discipline, you can just take a moment, write that outline, organize your information, and it will really help you write much, much quicker. So a basic way to do this would be write 3 topic sentences, maybe a few quick notes about the supporting details, some kind of final thought, which we will talk about later, and then go back and write your thesis statement. Once you have that, you can really start to build up your essay, and it's actually much, much faster to write like this. As much as you want to really just start writing, start typing, if you have that structure, it's much, much easier. So an easy way to describe this is if you think of your outline, of your kind of structure, as being a skeleton. So once you have the skeleton, it's very easy in the next draft. So when you start writing, you're actually just adding muscle. And then by the time you're doing your final draft, you've covered it in skin and hair and other kind of gross stuff. So if you don't start with that skeleton, you end up with just a kind of blob, a kind of very soft mess just on the floor. But if you have that skeleton, you have that outline, writing is actually much, much easier. So building your human is actually much, much easier. So a little bit of self-discipline. Yes, I understand you want to rush in and write and start writing, but just taking a little bit of time to get your ideas together first, it stops you getting stuck in the second paragraph or the third paragraph. And you get stuck because you don't know the direction that you're going. Okay, so today we talked about the importance of a thesis statement, where it goes, the characteristics of a thesis statement. We looked at some examples, and we looked at the importance of outlining. All right, so hopefully this is useful. This is something you're going to use. And yeah, thanks a lot. Bye.